He stood in the crowded market, a single dad with nothing left but one worn tool and the weight of his daughter's future, when a stranger stepped forward with an offer so unexpected it would turn his entire life upside down. Before we dive into the story, make sure to hit subscribe button and like the video, and tell us in the comments where you watching from. Now, let's jump into the story.
It was just after sunrise when Mason Hales set a torque wrench on a folding table and stood back like a man placing a keepsake on an altar. The Saturday market in Willow Bend smelled like coffee and wet hay, and the crowd drifted past jars of peach jam and hand tool belts. Mason tugged his denim jacket tight. He glanced at the wrench, the last tool from his father's box, and tried to treat it like inventory instead of memory. Ivy, his 8-year-old, sat on an upside-down milk crate with a sketchbook on her knees. She drew the awning lights, the ribbon of puddles, and the stray dog everyone fed but nobody claimed. When she looked up, her eyes asked a question he did not want to hear. "Are we going to be okay?" she whispered. "We are," he said, "because love requires courage, even when numbers do not. We just need to catch up on rent. Besides, it's only a tool." The lie was gentle and heavy. His father had palmed that wrench in a narrow garage that smelled like diesel and peppermint gum. They fixed what limped in: neighbor tractors, band vans, stubborn snowblowers. Now the tool lay under a sign that read, "Moving Sale." A man in a camel cap weighed the wrench like a fish, smirked, and set it down. Another offered a price that sounded like help and felt like insult. Mason kept his tone even while Ivy watched his jaw harden. The crowd thickened. Then she stepped out of a slate-green pickup marked Bray Ridge Farms. Charlotte Bray walked like someone who knew what every acre on her land was doing by feel alone. Her eyes were steady and clear. Some said she was old money. Others said she built the farm after a hard year. She stopped at Mason's table and studied the wrench without touching it. "That sign true?" she asked, tipping her chin toward Moving Sale. "It is," Mason said. "I'm clearing out." "Clearing out what?" "Costs that outran me," he said. Ivy peeked over her sketchbook. Charlotte's face softened. "Hi there," she said. "Hi," Ivy replied. "I like your truck." "Thank you," Charlotte said. "I like your drawing." She lifted the wrench and turned it. The steel was polished by years of work. "How much?" she asked. Mason named a number that hurt. It was not high. It was what rent required. Charlotte looked at him, then at Ivy, then back at the tool. "I'll buy it," she said. Her voice was even as fence posts. "I'll buy it, at any price." "Any price?" Mason said. "Within reason," she replied, a corner of her mouth bending. Two ranchers hurried over with feed questions. She answered, then returned to Mason. "I can wire funds today," she added more quietly. "Or we can talk about something better." "Better than money?" "Sometimes," she said. "Sometimes a tool wants a job." Mason had no answer. The last month had been shut doors. The shop where he worked burned in a heat. Insurance calls dragged. Savings thinned. Rent did not. He sold the compressor, the welder, 3 socket sets. He had hoped the wrench was a line he would not cross. Now Charlotte stood at that line, offering what he did not yet understand. "Come by Bray Ridge this afternoon," she said. "My foreman is out with a broken ankle. We're short a mechanic, and half our machines are telling secrets to the grave. I need someone who respects a tool." Ivy sat up. "Do you have baby goats?" she asked. Charlotte's smile warmed. 3. Ivy's eyes brightened. Mason felt gravity tilt, more like a door that finally opens than a fall. "I can come after I pack up," he said. "Good." Charlotte slid a card across. "One more thing. Don't sell that wrench today." "You said you would buy it, and I meant it," she said. "But I don't want it as a trophy. I want it working. Bring it with you." The ranchers called again. She lifted a hand in apology and moved away. Mason stood until she was gone. Ivy tugged his sleeve. "Dad," she whispered, "do you think she's a nice rich or a mean rich?" "I think she's the kind who knows the difference," he said. He picked up the wrench and breathed. A bell rang from the barn. Mason and Ivy packed the sign, the cash box that did not pretend to be heavy, and the crate that had been a seat. As he folded the table legs, he felt the lightness that follows a decision you feared. The market noise fell behind them. Ivy climbed into her booster seat, pressed her nose to the window, and watched the Bray Ridge pickup go. "We are going, right?" she asked. "We are going," Mason said. He toned the key and the engine caught. He set the wrench on the seat. For the first time in weeks, he let the road be more than a problem. It could be a story again. "We are ready." Mason turned off the highway at a gravel lane marked Bray Ridge Farms. The truck bounced past fences, rows of corn, and a red barn that looked older than memory. Charlotte stood near the workshop, sleeves rolled, clipboard in hand. The air smelled of grease and hay. Ivy pressed her face to the window, wide-eyed at goats bleeding in a side pen. "Mr. Hale," Charlotte said as Mason parked. "You made it." "Just Mason," he answered. He lifted the wrench from the seat, like a promise. Ivy clung to his leg. Charlotte crouched to Ivy's level. "Want to see the goats?" Ivy glanced at her dad. Mason nodded. A farmhand waved Ivy toward the pen. Ivy skipped off, sketchbook tucked under her arm. Mason's chest loosened as laughter carried. Charlotte led him into the shop. 2 tractors sat silent, one with a bent axle, the other coughing out smoke. Tools lay scattered, as if abandoned mid-battle. She gestured. "This is where you come in." Pause. Mason ran a hand along the tractor's hood. "Old but loyal," he said. "Give me a socket set and I can tell you what it needs." She crossed her arms. "We lost our mechanic 6 weeks ago. I've been patching, but I can't keep pace. I can pay you better than the market would give for that wrench." Mason looked up. "And what if I fail?" "Then we learn fast," she said. "But I don't think you will." He crouched, slid under the frame, listened with his hands. Metal spoke in familiar language. After an hour, the engine rumbled back to life. The noise filled the shop with hope. Charlotte smiled, brief and genuine. "Looks like you speak tractor." "I speak broke machines," Mason said, wiping his hands. "They don't hide their pain." Outside, Ivy ran with the goats, laughing until she tripped. Charlotte meeched her first, brushing dust from her knees. Ivy beamed, unhurt. Mason watched, struck by the sight of his daughter, safe in someone else's hands. He hadn't seen that since his wife passed 2 years earlier. They ate supper at Charlotte's farmhouse. Stew steamed in bowls. Bread warmed the table. Ivy chattered about goats, sketches, and new friends. Mason stayed quiet, measuring the distance between gratitude and pride. Charlotte asked simple questions. Where they lived, what Ivy liked in school, how Mason learned to fix engines. She listened like answers mattered. After Ivy slept on the couch, Charlotte poured coffee. "What happened to her mom?" she asked softly. "Cancer," Mason said, 2 years ago. Since then, it's just been me and Ivy. I keep moving, but some days it feels like standing still." Charlotte's eyes softened. "I raised this farm after my father died. I know the silence that follows loss. It makes you strong, but lonely." Mason nodded. Words settled between them. Outside, crickets sang. He glanced at Ivy curled under a quilt. She deserves more than flea markets and broken tools. Charlotte looked at him. "Then stay. Help me run this farm. I'll pay fair. Ivy can run free here." Mason hesitated. "You don't know me. I know enough," she said. "You fix what's broken. You don't give up easy. That's what I need." The offer felt like a door opening on a dark hallway. He thought of Ivy, the goats, the sound of engines he knew how to heal. He thought of Charlotte, standing steady, eyes clear. "I'll try," he said. Days turned into weeks. Mason rose before dawn, repairing machines, hauling feed, guiding Ivy through chores. Ivy grew stronger, barefoot in grass, painting barns in watercolor. Charlotte worked beside him, never above him, sleeves rolled, hands dirty. They argued over repairs, laughed over burnt toast, shared coffee by lantern light. Trust grew quiet, like roots underground. Mason began to see Charlotte not as rich, but as relentless. She had wealth, yes, but it was carved from work, risk, and refusal to surrender. Ivy adored her. Mason caught himself watching her at dusk, hair catching sun, voice firm yet kind. He shook off feelings, reminding himself he was just hired help. Then came the storm. Thunder cracked one night, tearing branches. A tree fell across the goat pen. Mason ran out in rain, Ivy clinging to his back, Charlotte already there with a flashlight. Together, they pulled boards, freed animals, drove them to shelter. Rain soaked them through. Charlotte slipped on mud. Mason caught her. Their eyes locked, breathless. Lightning lit the sky. Neither spoke, but something shifted. Later, after the animals were safe, Charlotte handed Mason a towel. "Thank you," she said. Her voice was softer than he'd heard. "I couldn't have managed without you." "We're a team," he replied. The words surprised him. She smiled faintly. "Yes, we are." Ivy padded in, half asleep, hugging Charlotte's waist. "You're like family," she murmured. Charlotte froze, then hugged her back. Mason saw tears in her eyes before she looked away. The storm passed, but its mark remained. Walls that loss had built began to crack. Mason lay awake that night, hearing the rain fade, wondering if his life had just begun again without him noticing. Morning came clear and cool. The storm swept clean from the sky. Mason walked the fence line with his wrench hanging from his belt. Ivy skipped beside him, boats splashing through puddles. At the far field, Charlotte was already working, stacking bales with sleeves rolled to her elbows. Mason paused, watching how she moved with a mix of strength and patience. Ivy whispered, "She's strong, Dad." He nodded, "Stronger than she knows." Over breakfast in the farmhouse, Charlotte spread maps of the land across the table. "There's a problem," she said. "The North Field irrigation is failing. The old system leaks and labor's short. If we don't fix it before July, crops will dry." Mason leaned closer, tracing lines on the map. "I can rig a temporary pump, but we'll need new pipes. That costs." Charlotte looked at him steadily. "I can cover it, but I'll need someone I trust to manage the work." Mason felt the weight of her words. "You're asking me to stay for good." She said nothing, only waited. Ivy interrupted. "Dad, can we?" Her eyes glowed with hope. Mason breathed slowly. "We'll try," he said. That week, Mason worked sunup to sundown, installing pipes, welding leaks, teaching Ivy to hand him tools. Charlotte joined every shift, sweat on her brow, dirt under her nails. They shared water jugs, shared silence, shared brief glances that said more than words. One evening, as the pump sputtered to life, water flowed strong across rows of young plants. Charlotte let out a laugh, rare and bright. Mason laughed too, surprised by the sound. Ivy clapped and shouted, "We did it!" The three of them stood together in the fading light, wet shoes and tired smiles, like a family that had earned something real. But peace never lasted long. One night, Mason opened a letter slipped under his door. It was from his landlord back in town. Unpaid rent, eviction notice, court threats. His chest tightened. Ivy's sketches hung on the walls here now, but they still belonged to another address. He showed the letter to Charlotte. She read, jaw tense. "How much?" she asked. "Too much," he admitted. We'll figure it out. She folded the paper neatly. No, I'll figure it out. You belong here. He shook his head. I can't let you bail me out. Her eyes softened. I'm not bailing you out. I'm investing in you. Silence stretched. Mason whispered, Why? She answered, Because I see how you fight for Ivy, how you never quit. That's worth more than rent. He had no reply. Sometimes love sounded like practicality. Ivy found them quiet, eyes red. What's wrong? She asked. Mason knelt. We might lose the apartment. Ivy frowned, but we live here now. Her words were so simple, so certain, that both adults fell silent. She was right. Home wasn't the apartment. It was wherever they stood together. Still, doubts gnawed Mason. He had been burned by offers before, jobs that vanished, promises that broke. One evening, he told Charlotte, I don't want to be Charity. She set down her coffee. Then don't be. Be my partner. His heart jolted. Partner? She nodded. This farm is more than crops. It's people. I can handle fields and finance. You bring skill and grit. Together, we can build something lasting. Mason hesitated. Partnership isn't simple. Neither is life, she said. But maybe that's the point. Her words planted deeper than she knew. The harvest came, and with it, celebration. Neighbors gathered at the barn with music, food, and stories. Ivy danced with other children, cheeks flushed. Mason fixed lanterns, watching her joy. Charlotte joined him. She's happy, she said. Because she's safe, Mason replied. Their eyes met. Music swelled around them. Slowly, as if drawn, Charlotte reached for his hand. He let her. The world narrowed to warmth and touch. Whispers circled the crowd, but neither cared. Ivy spotted them, grinned wide, and gave a thumbs up before spinning back to her dance. Later that night, when the barn quieted, Charlotte walked Mason to his truck. You know, she said, you never did sell that wrench. He smiled faintly. Maybe because it wasn't done working. She stepped closer. Neither are we. Rain threatened again, low clouds rolling. Mason's breath caught. He wanted to close the space between them, but fear of ruining what was good held him. Charlotte solved it. She leaned in, pressed her lips to his cheek, and whispered, Don't wait forever. She walked inside before he could answer. Mason stood under the dark sky, wrench heavy on his belt, heart heavier in his chest. He knew then that this was no longer just survival. It was the beginning of something that could heal them both, if only he had the courage. Autumn settled across Willow Bend, fields brushed gold, and barns smelling of fresh hay. Mason tightened the last bolt on a combine while Ivy sketched pumpkins by the fence. Charlotte walked up, coat draped over her shoulders, hair loose in the breeze. Machines are ready, he said. She nodded. So am I. There was weight behind her words. Mason felt it, but said nothing. The Harvest Festival filled the town square that weekend. Stalls overflowed with pies, quilts, and jars of honey. Ivy tugged Mason's hand through the crowd until they reached Charlotte's booth. Bray Ridge apples stacked high, cider steaming in cups. Children gathered for pony rides. Mason noticed how Charlotte moved through it all, steady and warm, greeting neighbors by name, laughing with ease. She belonged here, and somehow so did he. As dusk fell, lanterns lit the square. Music drifted. Couples danced on worn boards. Charlotte found Mason leaning against a post, Ivy asleep on his shoulder. Come dance, she said. He hesitated, then let her take his hand. The world blurred into soft lights and fiddle strings. She whispered, You still think you're only passing through? His throat tightened. I don't know how to be more than what I've been. She pressed her forehead to his. Then start here. with me. The following week, Mason faced the court date for unpaid rent. Charlotte went with him, sitting firm beside him. When the judge ruled eviction final, Mason thought he should feel broken. Instead, he felt free. Afterward, as they walked to the truck, Charlotte said, "You already have a home, Bray Ridge." Ivy chimed from the back seat, half asleep. "That's when I said." Mason laughed, the sound carrying relief he hadn't felt in years. Work deepened their bond. Every repair, every meal, every shared silence grew into something unspoken but undeniable. One evening, Mason found Charlotte in the barn, mending a harness by lantern glow. He held out his wrench. "My father's," he said. "I kept it too long, thinking it was all I had left. But maybe it's time it belonged to someone who gave me a new life." Charlotte shook her head gently. "Keep it. We'll need it for us." He realized then she wasn't offering rescue. She was offering partnership. Winter came, crisp and white. The farmhouse fireplace crackled as Ivy decorated a small tree with handmade ornaments. Mason and Charlotte sat close, their shoulders brushing. Ivy turned, grinning. "You should marry her, Dad." Silence hung. Charlotte's eyes widened. Mason chuckled nervously. "Kids say things." Ivy crossed her arms. "Kids see truth." Charlotte's gaze softened. "What do you say, Mason?" Snow fell thick the next morning. Mason walked with Ivy to the barn, heart pounding. He carried no ring, only courage. Charlotte was there, brushing snow from the horses. He stepped forward. "You once told me not to wait forever. I don't want to wait anymore." She flows, breath visible in the cold air. "What are you saying?" He knelt, wrench in hand. "I don't have a diamond. I don't have much at all. But I have this, and I have Ivy. And I have a heart that wants to spend every morning and every night with you. Will you marry me?" Her eyes filled. She bent, lifted him up. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Mason Hale." Ivy squealed, hugging them both. Snow swirled like confetti around them, the barn glowing behind. Spring brought a wedding under the wide oak tree at Bray Ridge. Neighbors gathered, tables spread with food. Children chasing chickens. Charlotte wore a simple ivory dress, pear pinned with wildflowers. Mason wore his father's jacket, polished wrench clipped to his belt. Ivy walked between them, proud and beaming. Vows were spoken plain and true, to work, to laugh, to raise Ivy, to never forget that love is built on small daily choices. When Mason kissed Charlotte, cheers erupted. Ivy shouted, "We're a family now." Life settled into rhythm. Mornings smelled of coffee and bread. Mason repaired machines, Charlotte managed fields. Ivy grew wild and bright. Laughter filled spaces once heavy with silence. At night, they sat on the porch, stars stretching across the sky. Mason would look at Charlotte, at Ivy asleep inside, and whisper, "Home." And it was. Not the kind built of walls alone, but of hands that hold steady, of second chances, of a farmer who saw worth in a single dad, and a single dad brave enough to believe in love again. From one man's last tool to a love that rebuilt a family, this story reminds us all that kindness, resilience, and second chances can change not just lives, but entire communities. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share so more people can believe in the power of stories that truly matter.